Okay, I'm just going to analyse a game from 1853 played between Schulder and Boden, Samuel Boden. Samuel Boden was an English chess player and editor of the chess column in the Field magazine. Of course, he left us with the wonderful legacy of the Bodens mate, and he is also responsible for some of the theory around a gambit called the Boden-Kieseritzky gambit. As well as being a good chess player, he edited, as I said, the Field magazine. The Field magazine was actually a magazine for the hunting, shooting, and fishing interested. But his column in the Field magazine was a big part of chess being so popular in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s in England. Published many of the published and wrote about many of the important games of the day, the Morphy games. He actually played a match against Morphy himself, and he lost that match against Morphy. But he did manage to win a game, and Morphy said that Boden was the best player he played against in England. And during Morphy's tour of Europe, Howard Staunton, who gave his name at least to the Staunton pattern chess set, the standard chess set which gets used in most tournaments, had been considered the world's best players. But by the 1850s, he was old and he was past his best. He wasn't any longer the best player in the world, but he still got called the world's best player. And Paul Morphy was desperate to play a match against Howard Staunton to show that he was the world's best chess player, which he was. Why was he so desperate? Because his family thought that being a professional chess player was no kind of occupation for a gentleman, and the Morphy family were, gentlemen from Louisiana, New Orleans, and so he knew that after he'd had his usual, which was usual at that time for people who were rich enough to take a tour of Europe, after he'd had his usual tour of Europe, he was expected to give up chess playing and take up his role in the family firm of lawyers. He had passed the Louisiana bar exam, but not having the opportunity to play high standard chess is one of the contributing factors to his later very sad mental decline. That and the refusal of Staunton to play a match against him to let him show the world that he was the world's best chess player. I think, if he could see what was happening now, where everybody recognises and realises that Paul Morphy was the best chess player in the world in his time, it might make him happy, who knows. But this is neither about Morphy nor Staunton, it's about Samuel Boden and the original Boden's mate. So, here goes. White plays shoulder, plays e4, Boden plays e5, knight f3 to attack the pawn. Yes, I often call the Philidor defense for the silly door defense. There are problems with the Philidor defense. It blocks in the dark square bishop, and it's a pawn move, not a developing move. So the result is, alright, the pawn is now defended on e5, but Black doesn't have any more pieces into the game. He can get a piece into the game by defending with c6, or he can get a piece into the game by attacking the pawn on e4 with knight to f6. He doesn't do either of these, and white is one development tempo up. White can now take out his bishop, be ready to castle, and have two pieces developed against none, which could well very quickly become a source of a good attack. But he chooses not to do that, and he plays c3, possible thinking of supporting the centre. But this is a bad idea. It takes away the natural square for the knight on c3, and the knight is the best defender for the pawn on e4. The pawn on e4 is currently undefended. And as we like to say, loose pieces drop off. So, yeah, not really a move I approve of. I don't know what the engine says about it. I don't really care. I have my reasons for not approving of the game. I've explained them to you. And Boden does exactly what I would do in this situation. f5, he attacks the centre, but it's worth noting that both diagonals of death, the a2 to g8 and the h5 to e8 diagonals, are opened by this move. It's a committal and to some extent weakening move, but it goes to attack against the centre immediately. So, shoulder comes to c4, back to the idea of development, and of course, the playing bishop takes knight is a serious threat. If he plays bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, he can then play pawn. If the pawn takes, he can take with the knight, and he's threatening queen here check, which will win the h-pawn. A serious threat, you know. He's doing something with that move. It's a good idea. Would have been a better idea the move before he played c3, but you know, I think I've said enough about that. Okay, so Boden plays knight to f6. This allows knight to g5, creating a double attack on f7, but it can be answered by pawn to d5, blocking the bishop. And if he takes with the pawn, then he can take with the knight and hey, chill. And then you know, stop the attack. So he doesn't do that. He plays what he'd planned with d4, planning to break open black centre. But the result of this is that he ends up with a poor pawn structure and not any better development than his opponent. So Boden takes and threatens the knight, of course. The only good answer is to take back and threaten a knight in return. Boden takes the knight, and Schulder takes the knight, and Boden takes the pawn. Should white take with the queen, or just take with the pawn? Well, in theory, there's only one good answer, which is to take with the pawn. These pawns then become isolated. One of the important things about isolated pawns is the reason for that players go in for the IQP, isolated queen pawn position, is, you know, the isolated pawns are harder to defend in an endgame, but they give you good access to the files on either side. In this case, the E and G files. I don't think it's so relevant in this case, but you know, that says you need to keep pieces on the board to have the activity to take advantage of that, you know, plus side of having the isolated pawns. The other thing is, isolated pawns are hard to defend, and they become harder to defend in the endgame. So if he takes with the queen, Boden takes with the queen, plays the bishop, and then plays rook to f8, and attacks the pawn straight away. And then he might think about playing pawn here, bishop here, these kind of things. You know, it's going to be tough for him. So of course he makes the right choice and takes with the pawn. Yeah, Boden instantly goes to development. Good. So now, in a situation where after the, as I would call it, suboptimal d6 to defend the e pawn, in that situation, white had one piece developed and could have had two pieces developed against black's no pieces developed. Now, just 7 moves later, we're in a position where black has 2 pieces developed and white only 1. So things have completely reversed. Okay, the pawn is now defended by the bishop on f4, and it does open up the f3 square for the use by a piece later. I think we can well expect that the queen will come to f3 at a later point in time. Black carries on with development and makes itself clear to castle long. Yeah, bishop development, making himself clear to castle long, and indeed he does that. The knight comes out, and now he's more or less ready to castle. He could have thought about playing, as I said before, queen to f3. Had he played queen to f3 immediately before the knight, then knight here, the pawn would be pinned, attacks the queen and attacks the bishop, and as well as the disadvantages of the isolated f pawns. White would then be ending up with a knight and bishop against 2 bishops. So, not great. So he develops the knight first. That's the correct order to do it in. And Boden comes to e8 with the rook. Of course, placing the rook on the half-open file. Yeah, great idea. So the queen comes. Now it can use the square e3, f3. And white is now ready to castle long. So black develops his last piece, well, bishop's last piece, but he develops his bishop to a better square and takes control of this important diagonal. White castles, and black attacks the bishop. Here it might be possible to take with the queen. I haven't analysed what happens if he takes with the queen. I think the rook probably comes here, and bishop probably comes here, and the other rook probably comes here, and then ideas of knight d5 are going to work again. So yeah, I don't know. It might be possible. I haven't analysed it. At a glance, I think, yeah, okay, white possibly can win a pawn in that way, but it's going to be very, very hard to keep hold of that pawn if he wins it with the queen in that way. But he takes with the bishop. I've just realised if he takes with the queen, the result will be exactly the same. So no, taking with the queen doesn't make any difference. And now I invite you to find the Bodens mates here. Pause the video if you need to. Take a minute or two to think about it. If you've seen it before, you'll spot it instantly. And I don't mean if you've seen this game before. If you've seen a Bodens mate before, you'll spot it instantly. And Boden spots it instantly and plays queen takes c3 check, giving his queen up for a pawn. The king can't move to b1 because of the bishop. So the queen has to be taken, and now we have the classic Boden's mate, where 2 bishops occupy 2 diagonals, which are the only diagonals white has moves on. So the king is in check, and this square is blocked by the bishop, and this square blocked by the other bishop, and it's checkmate. Alright, if you have enough experience in chess, you've seen this theme many, many times, and you might think, okay, yeah, what's so impressive about this? We've seen this theme before. It's boring, it's ordinary, it happens all the time. This is the very first time this theme was seen in a serious chess game. It wasn't boring, it wasn't ordinary, it had never been seen before. And yeah, You know, that when you do something like this and you're the very first to do it, that makes it brilliant and shocking. And that's why we call it a Boden's mate, because I think he deserves the honour after coming up with such a beautiful finish. Yeah, okay. That's it for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share and comment on the video. In theory, that will help me with the algorithm. Who knows? But yeah, okay, thanks. Bye.